Maxwell, she began, her voice shaky. I'm pregnant again for the third time. Maxwell looked at her, confused at first, but then a broad smile spread across his face. That's amazing, Lola. Another baby. We are so blessed. But Lola didn't share his excitement. She wiped her tears, struggling to hold back more tears. I don't know if I can do this again, Maxwell. I was just getting ready to go back to work. And now, this. Maxwell was the kind of man that people noticed when he walked into a room. Tall with a confident stride, his sharp features and smooth dark skin made him stand out. He had just completed his university degree in business administration, and he was determined to make a name for himself. At 22, he was full of energy, ambition, and ready to conquer the world. It didn't take long after graduation before Maxwell secured a good job at one of the top companies in Lagos. He was proud of the position he got as a project manager, and he felt like the first step towards the success he had always dreamt of. The salary was good, the office environment was fast-paced, and his bosses liked him. Maxwell made sure to impress them every day with his hard work and smart ideas. He arrived at work early, stayed late, and always made sure to meet deadlines. As time passed, his efforts didn't go unnoticed. His boss, Mr. Adewale, often complimented him during team meetings. Maxwell, that was an excellent work on the last project, he would say, patting him on the back. These words motivated Maxwell to push even harder. He was focused, driven, and nothing could distract him. Outside of work, many people tried to get close to Maxwell. Women in particular were drawn to his calm confidence and his good looks. Some even sent him gifts to the office or tried to spark conversations after work gatherings. But Maxwell always smiled politely and kept his distance. He wasn't interested in a relationship. He had big dreams, and nothing could take his focus away from that. I'll think about women later, he told his friend Kunle one evening, when they were seated at a bar near the office, relaxing after a long week. Right now, I just want to be the best at what I do. Colin laughed and shook his head. Maxwell, you will get too old to enjoy life. If you keep thinking that way, he teased. What if you meet someone amazing at work? Maxwell just smiled and took a sip of his drink. His mind was already at the office, thinking about the next project. For months, everything seemed to be going Maxwell's way. He was in control. He received a promotion within his first year at the company and now led his own team. His colleagues respected him and his reputation as a rising star in the company. But when he thought he had everything figured out, things started to change. One Monday morning, as Maxwell walked into the office, he noticed a new face at the team meeting. A young, beautiful woman, smartly dressed in a navy blue blazer, sat confidently at the table, looking completely at ease. Her name was Lola, and she had just been hired as a project manager in the same department as Maxwell. Maxwell didn't pay much attention at first, but after a few weeks, it became clear that Lola wasn't just another new hire. She was just as hardworking, determined and focused as he was. In fact, she was quickly becoming his biggest competition. Maxwell has always been used to being the best, the one everyone looked up to, but now, Lola was taking some of the spotlight. At first, Maxwell didn't like her. He found her attitude a little too confident. No one can compete with me, he thought, especially not a woman. Every time Lola spoke in meetings, Maxwell found himself growing more frustrated. She always had an opinion, and it wasn't long before their boss, Mr. Adewale, began complimenting her work as much as he did Maxwell's. Well done, Lola, that's a great idea, Mr. Adewale would say, nodding approvingly. Maxwell couldn't help but feel a sting of jealousy. He had worked so hard to be the best, and now someone else was strengthening his position. Maxwell and Lola had maintained a silent rivalry for months. Each time one of them completed a project, the other would silently assess how they could do better. Maxwell had been proud of his position as a top employee, but Lola's arrival has shifted the balance. She had quickly gained favor in the office, and her work was consistently excellent. Even though they were in the same department, they rarely spoke beyond what was necessary. One afternoon, as Maxwell was wrapping up a meeting, Mr. Adewale called him into his office. As soon as Maxwell entered, he noticed that Lola was already seated, her face as unreadable as ever. Maxwell's curiosity grew, but he kept his expressions neutral as he sat down. "Maxwell, Lola," Mr. Adewale began, "we have an important project coming up. One of our biggest clients, Zenith Tech. They've requested a fresh strategy for their upcoming product launch. It's a huge opportunity for the company, and we need our best people on it." Maxwell immediately felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly the type of challenge he thrived on. He was already imagining himself leading the project, presenting the final plan, and impressing both the client and the company. But before he could respond, Mr. Adewale continued, "I want the both of you to work together on this. Maxwell, you've shown great leadership, and Lola, your creative solutions have been exceptional. I am confident you will make a great team." Maxwell blinked. Work with Lola? The idea of collaborating with her didn't sit well with him. He had always viewed her as a competition, not a partner. Glancing at Lola, he saw that she was as calm as ever, though her eyes briefly met his. It was clear she wasn't thrilled about the idea either. "Of course, sir," Maxwell replied, his voice steady. He couldn't refuse such a big opportunity. Lola nodded in agreement as well, although neither of them looked particularly pleased. The days that followed were tensed. Their first few meetings were awkward and formal, with both of them trying to avoid stepping on each other's toes. Maxwell would suggest an idea, and Lola would either quietly agree or offer a different approach without much discussion. There was no real connection, just two people trying to get the job done. But as the project progressed, something began to shift. They had no choice but to communicate more frequently and slowly. The words between them started to calm down. They were both perfectionists, and the drive for excellence began to bring them together. One very evening, after a long day of work, Maxwell found himself working late in the office. He wasn't surprised when he saw Lola still at her desk, reviewing some data. "You're here late," he said, trying to break the silence between them. "I could say the same about you," she replied with a small smile, her eyes still on her screen. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Over the next few days, their conversations became a little more relaxed. Maxwell began to appreciate Lola's attention to detail, and Lola started to respect Maxwell's ability to think strategically. Their combined efforts resulted in strong ideas, and it became clear that together they made a very powerful team. They began having lunch together, not because they were friends, but because it was easier to continue their work discussions. However, their colleagues in the office started noticing. Seeing Maxwell and Lola frequently talking and sitting together sparked rumors. "Are they dating or something?" one colleague whispered to another. "I thought they didn't even like each other at first." The rumors spread quickly. Soon, every corner of the office seemed to be buzzing with speculation about Maxwell and Lola's supposed relationship. Both of them noticed, but neither of them said anything. For now, they were too focused on delivering their best work to care about what people were saying. The Zenith Tech project was a huge success. Maxwell and Lola had worked tirelessly, and when they presented their final plan to the client, the room was filled with nods of approval. Their boss, Mr. Adewale, couldn't have been prouder. The project had brought in a significant contract for the company, and both Maxwell and Lola were praised for their efforts. But beyond the professional recognition, something deeper had changed between them. The long hours they had spent together, the late-night brainstorming sessions, and the countless discussions had brought them closer. They started to share more than just work ideas. Maxwell began to appreciate Lola's sharp wit and calm demeanor, while Lola saw a side of Maxwell that was caring and thoughtful, a stark contrast to the competitive man she had first met. One evening, after a particularly successful client meeting, Maxwell suggested they grab a dinner to celebrate. It wasn't the first time they had eaten together, but this dinner felt different. As they sat in a quiet restaurant, the conversation flowed easily. They talked about their families, their goals, and even their fears. The professional barrier that had once been between them had dissolved, and for the first time, they were seeing each other as more than just colleagues. A few weeks later, during one of their late-night work sessions, Maxwell finally gathered the courage to ask Lola out on a proper date. "Lola," he started, a bit nervously, "I know we've been spending a lot of time together because of work, but how about we do something just for us?" Lola looked up from her laptop, surprised but intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" she asked with a small smile. "Dinner maybe, no work talk, just you and me." Lola hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Alright Maxwell, let's give it a try." From that point on, their relationship took a new turn. They began dating, but they kept it a secret from the office. Neither of them wanted their personal lives to interfere with their careers, especially since there were already rumors circulating about them. So they were careful no one at the work could suspect that the two were becoming closer outside of the office. The months flew by and their bond even grew stronger. Maxwell had never imagined falling for someone at work, but with Lola, it just felt so right. She understood him in ways no one else had ever before. They supported each other's dream, and both were equally ambitious. Their relationship was a partnership in every sense of the word. 1 year later, Maxwell decided it was time to take it to the next step. He had been thinking about it for weeks, and he knew that Lola was the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. So one evening after dinner, Maxwell took a deep breath, got down on one knee, and asked Lola to marry him. The surprise on Lola's face quickly turned into joy. "Yes, Maxwell, yes," she exclaimed, tears of happiness in her eyes. It was a simple proposal, but it meant everything to the both of them. Their wedding was a small but beautiful ceremony, attended by close friends and family. Maxwell and Lola didn't want anything extravagant, just an intimate celebration of their love. They exchanged vows, promising to support each other through thick and thin, just as they had done in the past year. After the wedding, Lola moved into Maxwell's apartment and they began their new life as husband and wife. At work, everyone admired them. They were seen as the ultimate power couple, a team that not only succeeded in their professional lives, but also found happiness in their personal lives. Their colleagues often marveled at how they managed to balance everything so perfectly. To the outside world, it seemed like Maxwell and Lola had it all. 3 months into their marriage, Maxwell began to feel uneasy about the situation at work. While things were going smoothly on the surface, something about both he and Lola working in the same office started to bother him. One evening, after dinner, Maxwell sat down with Lola in the living room. He had been thinking about this for a while, but now he was ready to bring it up. "Lola," he began, choosing his words carefully, "I've been thinking about us working in the same place." Lola looked up, sensing something serious in his tone. "What about it?" she asked. Maxwell shifted in his seat. "It's just starting to feel strange, you know. People at the office are talking, and I don't think it's good for our marriage. I think one of us should leave the company." Lola frowned slightly. She hadn't expected this. "Maxwell, I love my job. I've worked so hard to get where I am," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I know, and you're amazing at what you do," Maxwell replied quickly, "but it is now becoming complicated. You know how people can be. I don't want our marriage to suffer because of the office gossip or any form of awkwardness." Lola thought about it for a moment. She understood where Maxwell was coming from, but the thought of leaving the job she loved was painful. Still, she didn't want to create tension between them, especially so early in their marriage. After a long pause, Lola sighed. "Okay, Maxwell, I'll resign, but I'm going to miss my job." Maxwell smiled, relieved that she had agreed. "Thank you, Lola. I promise it's for the best. You'll find something even better, I'm very sure." The next few weeks were very difficult for Lola. She had been such a key part of the team, and leaving the company wasn't easy. Her colleagues were shocked when she announced her resignation, and even Mr. Adewale tried to convince her to stay, offering her a raise, but Lola had already made up her mind. She had chosen her marriage over her career, trusting that she would find something else soon. Once she left the company, Lola started searching for a new job. She updated her resume, submitted applications, and went to interviews, but the process was slow and finding the right job took more time than she had anticipated. What made things worse was the subtle pressure she began to feel from Maxwell and his mother, Mrs. Adedayo. Mrs. Adedayo had always been fond of Lola, but now that the couple was married, she had one question on her mind: when would they have children? Every time she visited, she would bring it up in conversations. "Ah, Lola," she would say, smiling warmly, "when am I going to see my grandchild? Maxwell was such a joy to raise. I'm sure your children will be just as wonderful." Lola would smile politely and say, "Soon, Mama, we are waiting on God's time." But each visit left her feeling more anxious. Maxwell too began to echo his mother's concerns. One evening, as they sat down together to eat dinner, he gently brought up the topic. "Lola, don't you think it's time we started thinking about having children?" Lola put her fork down, surprised. "Maxwell, I've just left my job and I'm still looking for a new one. I want to get settled before we can start talking about babies." "I understand," Maxwell said, his tone soft but insistent. "But we've been married for a few months now. My mother keeps asking, and I think it's time we started planning." Lola felt the weight of his words. She had already dreamed of having a family, but she wasn't ready yet. The thought of giving her career completely to focus on children made her feel uneasy, but she didn't want to let Maxwell down. "Can we wait a little longer?" Lola asked quietly, hoping he would understand. Maxwell sighed, sensing her hesitation. "We can, but don't wait too long, Lola. My mother is expecting us to start a family soon." With that conversation, Lola felt even more pressure. She continued her job search, but couldn't escape the constant reminder that everyone expected her to become a mother soon. The stress began to weigh on her, and for the first time in a long while, Lola started to feel like she was losing control of her own life. A few months passed after their conversation about children, and Lola started to feel a change in her body. She had been tired more often and felt a little bit queasy in the morning. At first, she brushed it off as stress from the job search and the pressure of expectations from Maxwell and his mother. But when the symptoms didn't go away, she decided to take a pregnancy test. One evening, after Maxwell had left for a late meeting, Lola nervously opened the pregnancy test kit in the bathroom. Her hands shook slightly as she waited for the results. After what felt like an eternity, 2 clear lines appeared. She stared at the test in disbelief. She was pregnant. Lola sat down on the bathroom floor, overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. She had always wanted children, but now that the moment had come, all her fears about her career and future came rushing in. She had barely begun looking for a new job opportunity, and now a baby was on the way. The timing felt so uncertain, but a part of her was also deeply excited. That night, when Maxwell returned home, Lola decided to tell him the news. As they sat together in the living room, she took a deep breath and looked at him. "Maxwell," she began softly, "I have something to tell you." Maxwell looked at her, curiosity in his eyes. "What's going on?" "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, Maxwell was silent, as if processing what she had just said. Then suddenly, his face lit up with joy. "Lola, that's amazing," he exclaimed, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We are finally going to be parents." Lola smiled, feeling his excitement, but inside, the nervousness still lingered. Maxwell's joy was contagious, and over the next few weeks, they began preparing for the baby. Maxwell wasted no time in telling his mother the good news, and Mrs. Adebayo was beyond thrilled. She visited more often, offering advice and insisting that Lola take it easy. However, despite everyone's happiness, Lola found it difficult to fully relax. She was determined to keep herself busy even as the pregnancy progressed. She continued to send out her CV and attended a few interviews, hoping to land a job before the baby arrived. She didn't want to lose her sense of independence, and the thought of being a stay-at-home mom made her feel like she was losing a part of herself. Maxwell, on the other hand, couldn't understand why Lola was still so focused on work. "Lola, you're pregnant," he would say gently, but with a hint of frustration. You need to rest and take care of yourself. The job can always wait. But Lola would respond with a determined smile. I can't just sit at home all day, Maxwell. I want to keep moving, to stay productive. As the months passed and her belly grew, Lola found it harder to keep up with her routine. She was constantly tired, and simple tasks like cooking or cleaning left her very exhausted. But Maxwell, despite his initial excitement, began to expect more from her. He didn't seem to notice how tired she was and would often come home from work asking why certain chores weren't done. Lola, why didn't you cook dinner tonight? Maxwell asked one evening after a very long day at work. I was too tired, Lola replied, rubbing her back, and I've been on my feet all day. Maxwell frowned. But you are home all day, Lola. How can you be tired? You used to manage everything so well before. What happened now? Lola stared at him, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. She wanted to remind him that she was carrying their child, but instead, she took a deep breath and stayed quiet. Maxwell's demands were becoming more frequent, and he seemed to forget that she was in her final months of pregnancy. As the due day approached, Lola tried to stay positive. She had packed her hospital bag and the nursery items. Despite everything, she couldn't wait to meet their baby. She hoped that once the baby arrived, Maxwell would understand how much she had been going through. Finally, the day came. Lola went into labor early one morning and Maxwell was by her side. He rushed her to the hospital. It was a long and exhausting process, but after several hours of labor, Lola gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. The moment the nurse placed him in her arms, Lola's heart swelled with love and relief. She had done it. Maxwell stood by her side, tears in his eyes, as he looked down at their newborn son. He's so perfect. They decided to name him Ayo, meaning joy. It was fitting as their hearts were filled with happiness at the arrival of their son. But even in the midst of this joy, Lola couldn't shake the feeling of what lay ahead. The sleepless nights, the demands of motherhood, and the pressure to be the perfect wife weighed heavily on her mind. The early weeks after Ayo's birth were a whirlwind for Lola. Between late-night feeding, diaper changes, and trying to get a few hours of sleep, she barely had time for herself. Maxwell was excited to be a father, but his excitement didn't quite translate into help. He loved playing with Ayo when he got home from work, but when it came to the tougher parts of caring for a newborn, like waking up at 2 a.m. or changing diapers, Maxwell was nowhere to be found. Lola, I'm so tired from work. I can't get up in the middle of the night, Maxwell would say, turning over in his bed as Ayo cried from the crib beside them. Lola, exhausted but unable to argue, would get up and tend to her son. She was running on a little sleep and still trying to keep the house in order. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, and now caring for Ayo. It was all piling up on her shoulders. At first, she tried to manage everything, telling herself that it would get better with time, but as the days turned into weeks, she realized that Maxwell didn't seem to notice or care how much she was struggling. Maxwell expected dinner to be ready when he got home from work, the house to be clean, and Ayo to be calm and fed. You are at home all day, Lola, he would say with a tone that hinted at impatience. How hard can it be to care for things? Lola wanted to scream every time he said that. He had no idea what it was like to be home with a newborn. The crying, the endless feedings, the constant worry that she wasn't doing things right. It was all too much, but instead of fighting back, she kept quiet, not wanting to cause any argument. She told herself that things would get better once Ayo grew older. Just as she was starting to adjust to the demands of motherhood, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while Ayo was napping, Lola sat down with a cup of tea, trying to relax for a few minutes. She had been feeling unusually tired lately, even more than the typical new mom exhaustion. Her mind wandered back to the familiar feeling she had months ago before she found out she was pregnant with Ayo. Curious and a little nervous, Lola took another pregnancy test. The results appeared quickly, 2 lines again. Lola stared at the test, her heart sinking. She was pregnant again. She didn't know how to feel. Part of her was happy, she loved being a mother, and the thought of having another baby was exciting. But the timing was too overwhelming. She was already struggling to balance everything with Ayo, and now another baby was on its way. How was she supposed to handle it all? That evening, she decided to tell Maxwell. She hoped that he would understand how overwhelmed she felt, but when she broke the news to him, his reaction was far from what she had expected. "Lola, this is great," Maxwell said, his face lighting up. "Another baby means we are building our family." Lola tried to smile, but she couldn't hide her worry. "Maxwell, I don't know if I'm ready. It's a lot, and I haven't even gone back to work yet." Maxwell frowned. "Lola, why are you even thinking about work right now? You are pregnant again. I don't think it's a good idea for you to work, especially with 2 kids." "But I need something for myself," Lola said. "I need to feel like I am more than just a mother." Maxwell sighed and shook his head. "Lola, you're already doing so much at home. The house is your job now. Raising our children is more important than any job out there." Lola felt trapped by his words. She wanted to argue, to tell him that she still had dreams, that she didn't want to give up on her career. But looking at Maxwell's expression, she knew it would only lead to a fight. So she swallowed her feelings and nodded. "Okay, I'll stay home." Maxwell smiled, satisfied with her answer, and kissed her on the forehead. "I know it's a lot right now, but you are doing a great job, Lola. Our family is so lucky to have you." But Lola didn't feel lucky. She felt like she was slowly losing herself. Day by day, the demands of motherhood and the house, and now the thought of another pregnancy, were weighing her down. She loved Ayo with all her heart, but she missed the sense of independence she once had. She missed working, feeling productive outside of her home, and now with another baby on the way, it seemed like her dream of returning to work was slipping further and further away. As the months passed, Lola prepared for the arrival of her second child. Maxwell continued to focus on his career, often working late and leaving the household duties entirely to her. Even on weekends, Maxwell found reason to avoid the more challenging parts of parenting. He would take Ayo out to the park for an hour, but when it came to feeding him or putting him to bed, that responsibility always fell to Lola. Lola kept quiet about how overwhelmed she was. She didn't want to upset Maxwell, and she didn't want to admit to herself that she was struggling. But as her belly grew, so did the burden on her shoulders. She had no choice but to reassign herself to a new reality. She was no longer just Lola, the ambitious woman with a career. She was now Lola, the stay-at-home mother with little room left for her own dreams. A couple of months after the long, tiring pregnancy, Lola gave birth to her second child, a baby boy named Ire. The delivery went smoothly and Maxwell was thrilled to have another son. Lola too felt a deep sense of joy holding baby Ire in her arms. But mixed with that happiness was a familiar sense of anxiety, the same one she had felt after Ayo was born. She knew what lay ahead: sleepless nights, endless feeding schedules, and overwhelming demands of caring for a newborn. Maxwell, as usual, was busy with work. He was doing well in his career, and his schedule only got busier with his new promotion. He loved his children, but the heavy lifting of parenting was left to Lola, and providing for the family, Lola. He would say when she asked for help, "That's my role. You are great at taking care of the kids." Lola smiled weakly each time, but inside, the burden grew. Days turned into months, and she found herself sinking deeper into the routine of diapers, feedings, laundries, and the endless juggling of Ayo and Ire's needs. Maxwell, on the other hand, continued with his work, spending long hours at the office, and assuming that everything was running smoothly at home. 2 years passed, and just as Lola was starting to see a glimmer of hope, finally, Ayo was more independent, Ire was starting to work, and she could begin preparing to return to work. Her world turned upside down once again. One morning, she woke up feeling nauseous, a familiar feeling she hadn't experienced since her previous pregnancies. Her heart sank as she realized what might be happening. She rushed to the pharmacy to buy a pregnancy test, hoping against hope that her suspicions were wrong. But when the test showed 2 lines, confirming that she was pregnant for the 3rd time, Lola sat on the bathroom floor, overwhelmed by a wave of emotions. Tears streamed down her face. She loved her children deeply, but the thought of going through the entire process again felt so unbearable. She had just started to see a way out, plans to go back to work, to regain some semblance of her life she once had before, but motherhood consumed her completely, and now it felt like those plans were slipping away. That evening, Lola gathered the courage to talk to Maxwell. She had always kept her feelings about motherhood bottled up, but this time she needed him to understand how much she was struggling. "Maxwell," she began, her voice shaky, "I'm pregnant again for the third time." Maxwell looked at her, confused at first, but then a broad smile spread across his face. "That's amazing, Lola. Another baby. We are so blessed." But Lola didn't share his excitement. She wiped her tears, struggling to hold back more tears. "I don't know if I can do this again, Maxwell. I was just getting ready to go back to work. And now, this." Maxwell's smile faded as he realized where the conversation was heading. His voice grew firm. "Lola, don't even think about doing anything stupid. This is our child, and you are not going to do anything about it." Lola's heart sank. She had hoped Maxwell would listen to her fears, her exhaustion, but instead, his words felt like a wall closing in on her. She nodded, too tired to argue. Months later, Lola gave birth to their third child, a beautiful girl whom they named Zara. She was perfect, and holding her for the first time, Lola's heart was filled with love. But the reality of caring for 3 children, all under the age of 5, quickly set in. Maxwell was proud of their growing family, but once again, the responsibility of raising the children fell squarely on Lola's shoulders. With Ayo starting school, Ire in his toddler years, and the newborn in her arms, Lola felt like she was losing herself each day. The house was always a mess, the laundry never ending, and Lola was constantly running on empty. There was no time for herself, no space to even think about her dreams or her career. She tried talking to Maxwell again one night. After putting the children to bed, she sat down with him. "Maxwell," she said softly, "I can't do this alone anymore. I am exhausted. I need help." Maxwell looked at her, clearly confused. "What kind of help are you talking about, Lola?" "I think we need a maid. Just someone to help with the housework, or even to help with the kids sometime. It's too much for me," she explained. But Maxwell shook his head. "A maid? Lola, we don't need strangers in our home. You are their mother. This is your duty." Lola's heart sank. It was the same response he had given her before. No matter how much she explained her exhaustion, Maxwell couldn't or wouldn't understand. The weight of his words crushed her, and for the first time, she felt trapped in her own life. The days that followed were filled with overwhelming stress. Zara cried constantly, Ire demanded her attention, and Ayo's school needs added even more to her plate. Lola barely had time to eat or sleep, let alone take care of herself. She loved her children dearly, but the constant demands were pulling her apart. One morning, after a particularly difficult night with Zara, Lola sat in the kitchen, staring at the mountain of dishes in the sink. She could hear Ayo and Ire fighting in the living room. Zara's cries filling the house. Her chest tightened, and a wave of panic hit her. She couldn't do this anymore. Without thinking, she made a decision. She packed a few things, grabbed some clothes for Zara, and stuffed them into a small suitcase. She didn't know where she was going or for how long, but she knew she had to leave for her own sanity. She glanced at the clock. Maxwell would be home in a few hours, but by then, she would be gone. With a deep breath, she picked up Zara, her heart pounding as she quietly left the house without saying a word to anyone. For the first time in many years, Lola felt like she was finally doing something for herself. Maxwell came home from work that evening, expected to be greeted by the usual sounds of his children playing or Zara's soft cries from the nursery. But as he stepped into the house, an unsettling silence filled the air. The house was unusually quiet. No laughter, no crying, no movement. He called out for Lola. "Lola, where are you?" When there was no response, Maxwell frowned and headed to the living room, where Ayo and Ire were sitting in front of the TV, watching a cartoon. "Where is your mom?" Maxwell asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Ayo looked up and shrugged. "She is not here, Daddy." Maxwell's heart skipped a beat. He checked the kitchen, then the bedroom, but Lola was nowhere to be found. His eyes fell on a piece of paper on the kitchen counter. It was a short note in Lola's handwriting. Maxwell, I need some time to myself. Please take care of the boys, Lola. For a moment, Maxwell stood frozen, trying to make sense of it all. Lola had left. She had actually walked out, leaving him with the boys. He reread the note, hoping for more answers, but it was brief and gave him no clue as to where she had gone or how long she would be away. Maxwell ran his hand through his head, panic slowly gripping in. He had always believed Lola was strong enough to handle everything at home. He never imagined she would live like this. But now, for the first time, Maxwell was faced with the reality of what Lola had been going through. The boys were already starting to fight in the living room, and Zara's absence made the house feel strangely empty. That night was the longest night Maxwell had ever experienced. He tried to prepare dinner for the boys, but all he could manage was some bread and eggs. The kitchen was a mess, and the boys refused to eat. They kept asking when their mom would be back, and Maxwell had no answer for them. Bedtime was even harder. Ayo and Ire didn't want to sleep without their usual routine from Lola, and Maxwell struggled to keep them calm. By the time he finally got them into bed, it was almost midnight, and he felt utterly drained. The next morning, the chaos continued. Maxwell overslept, missing the time to get the boys ready for school. When he finally woke up, he had to rush around the house, try to make breakfast, packing their school bags and getting them dressed, all while trying to keep Ire from throwing his food across the kitchen. By the time they left the house, both boys were late for school, and Maxwell was exhausted before his day had even started. Days passed, and things didn't get any easier. Maxwell struggled to keep up with the demands of taking care of the boys, managing his job, and keeping the house in order. He couldn't believe how difficult it was to do what Lola had done every single day. The house became messier, meals were rushed, and the boys grew more restless without their mother around. One evening, after an especially long day, Maxwell sat down at the kitchen table. He had underestimated how much work went into running the household. Lola had done everything, cleaning, cooking, taking care of the children, and he had taken it all for granted. Now he was struggling to keep his head above the water. In his desperation, he reached for his phone. He sent Lola a message, hoping she would respond. Lola, please come back. I'm sorry. I had no idea how things were hard for you. The boys miss you and I miss you. Please, let's talk. But there was no response. Maxwell sent another message the next day, and another the day after that. Each message was more desperate than the last. Lola, I can't do this without you. I need you. Please just come home. We can work things out. Still, there was no reply. Meanwhile, Lola was in a serviced apartment a few miles away, finally getting the rest she had longed for. The apartment was quiet, peaceful. There were no dishes to wash, no laundry to fold, no crying babies to soothe. For the first time in years, she had time for herself. She spent her days catching up on sleep, reading, and simply enjoying the silence. It was exactly what she needed, the time to recover from the exhaustion of motherhood and years of putting herself last. But even though she was resting, Lola knew this couldn't last forever. Although she was with her daughter Zara, she still missed her boys, and a part of her missed Maxwell too, though she was still hurt by how he had ignored her pleas for help. She read his messages, but she didn't respond, not yet. She needed him to understand how much she had been suffering before she could even think about returning. Back at home, Maxwell was reaching his breaking point. The boys were starting to ask more questions about their mom, and he was running out of excuses. His performance at work was slipping, and his colleagues noticed the stress weighing him down. One day, his boss pulled him aside. Maxwell, is everything alright at home? You haven't been yourself lately. Maxwell nodded weakly, but the truth was nothing was alright. His once perfect life was falling apart, and he had no idea how to fix it. Finally, after days of no response from Lola, Maxwell made a decision. He called her parents, hoping they could help. I don't know where she is, Maxwell admitted, his voice strained, but please, I need her to come back. Lola's mother listened patiently, and after a long pause, she spoke softly. Maxwell, maybe this time apart is what the both of you needed. She's been going through a lot, more than you've realized. Just give her the time. Maxwell listened, then hung up the phone, feeling more helpless than ever. All he could do now was wait. Wait for Lola to return. Wait for the chance to make things right. He just hoped it wasn't too late. Maxwell had spent weeks pleading for Lola to come back home. Each day felt heavier than the last as he struggled with the boys, work, and the growing realization of how much he had taken Lola's efforts for granted. He had sent her countless messages, each one more desperate than the last, hoping for a response, but nothing came. All he could do was wait, wondering if she would ever return. One afternoon, as Maxwell was cleaning up after the boys had turned the living room, there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find Lola's mother standing there, her face calm but serious. Maxwell, she said softly, may I come in? He nodded, stepping aside to let her in, his heart pounding. He knew this conversation was going to be important, and they sat down at the kitchen table, and for a moment there was silence. Lola has been staying in a serviced apartment for a while, and I have been with her, her mother began. She needed time to rest, to think. She's been carrying a heavy burden for a long time, and I don't think you fully understood how much she's been struggling. Maxwell swallowed hard. I didn't realize how bad it was, he admitted, his voice low. I thought she could handle everything, but I was wrong. Lola's mother looked at him with kind but firm eyes. It's not too late, Maxwell, but you need to understand something. Lola needs you to be her partner, not just a name, but in action. She needs to feel like you are in this together. You are supporting her, not just providing financially, but emotionally and practically. Maxwell nodded, his throat tight with emotion. I understand now, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. She smiled gently and then reached for her bag and pulled out a small note. Lola asked me to give this to you. Maxwell took the note and unfolded it carefully. It was in Lola's handwriting, and his heart sank as he began to read. Maxwell, I love you and the children, but I needed time to remember who I am. For years, I've been carrying everything on my shoulders, and I feel like I was losing myself. I didn't want to leave, but I couldn't keep going the way things were. I need to know that things will change, that you will really be there for me, for our family. I'm willing to come home if you're ready to be the partner that I need. Love, Lola. Tears stung Maxwell's eyes as he read her words. He had been blind to her struggles, but now, seeing her pain written so clearly, he knew things had to change. Where can I see her? Maxwell asked, his voice thick with emotion. She's ready to come home, her mother replied. But Maxwell, this is your chance to show her that things will be different. Don't waste it. That evening, Maxwell cleaned the house, prepared dinner, and made sure the boys were settled. He wanted everything to be perfect for Lola's return. He felt a nervous excitement bubbling inside of him, mixed with the weight of responsibilities. Later that night, there was another knock on the door. Maxwell rushed to open it, and there she was, Lola, standing with Zara in her arms, looking tired but calm. Her eyes met his, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Maxwell stepped forward, his voice soft and full of regret. Lola, I am so sorry for everything. I should have listened to you. I should have been there for you more. I will do better, and I promise. Lola nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Maxwell, I just need us to be partners, to share this life forever. I can't do it alone anymore. I give up my career for this family. You won't have to, Maxwell assured her, reaching out to take Zara from her arms. I'll help with everything. I want us to be a team. They stepped inside, and Maxwell guided her to the couch. He made her favorite meal, and as they sat together, there was a sense of relief and peace in the air. For the first time in a long while, Lola felt like she wasn't alone. The boys quickly came in and saw their mother and were very excited. And over the next few weeks, Maxwell made good on his promises. He took on more responsibilities around the house, cooking, cleaning, and helping with the children. When the boys needed to be picked up from school, Maxwell was there. When Zara woke up in the middle of the night, Maxwell took his turn to rock her back to sleep. It wasn't easy for him at first, He was used to focusing solely on work and himself, but he saw the difference it made for Lola, and that was all the motivation he needed. Lola too began to find herself again. With Maxwell's support, she started looking for remote job opportunities, something she could manage while still being there for the children. Maxwell encouraged her every step of the way. He knew how important it was for her to have a career of her own, to feel fulfilled outside of being a mother. One evening, as they sat down together on the couch after putting the kids to bed, Lola looked over at Maxwell and smiled. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" he asked, glancing at her with a curious expression. "For listening, for being the husband that I want, and the father that we needed." Maxwell smiled back and took her hand. "I should have done it sooner, but I'm here now and I'm not going anywhere." Their relationship, once strained by misunderstanding and neglect, slowly began to heal. Maxwell and Lola grew closer than ever before, not just as husband and wife, but as true partners. They made decisions together, shared the workload, and most importantly, communicated openly. As time went on, their home became a place of love and support. The children thrived, and Maxwell and Lola found happiness again. They celebrated small victories, Lola landing a new remote job and Maxwell balancing work and family life, and together they built a home that was full of laughter and warmth. Though the journey had been difficult, Maxwell and Lola had emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. They had learned that a marriage wasn't about love, but about partnership, understanding, and the willingness to grow together through the hardest of times. And with that lesson, they created a life filled with joy, not just for themselves, but for their children who watched their parents' love bloom anew every day. The story teaches that a successful marriage is built on mutual support, shared responsibilities, and open communication. It highlights the importance of valuing a partner's efforts, acknowledging their struggles, and working together as a team. Neglecting this aspect can lead to resentment and emotional distance. However, through understanding and a willingness to change, relationship can be rebuilt, becoming stronger and more fulfilling for both partners. The story also emphasizes the need for balance between personal fulfillment and family life, showing that self-care is essential to avoid burnout. Thank you so much for watching this fantastic story on African Stories by Tiana. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing stories. See you next time.